Okay, this is Jape and Mary Boswell. He was my great-grandfather. He was born in 1866. He used to buy cattle in North Florida and drive them down to West Bay, Florida, and sell them to the Spanish. He would stay at West Bay and fish and catch mullet and dry them, and bring them back to North Florida and sell the mullet. He sawed cross ties and hewed cross ties with a broad axe. When they built the L&N Railroad from Jacksonville to New Orleans, he cut cross ties for many years.
That's interesting. What were their full names? Did they have middle names or?
All I know is Jape and Mary Boswell.
Are you saying Jake?
Jape.
Jape. How do you spell it?
J-A-P-A, I guess.
J-A-P.
We'll look on the tombstone.
On the tombstone. Oh, good. Okay. That's good. So they're buried here. Which cemetery are they buried in?
Mount Olive Cemetery.
Oh, really? Okay. I definitely want to go there because that's where a lot of Mears are. The Mears themselves are there. Okay, now which one is this?
This is Clinton and Delia.
Delia? I've got her on the database.
She is the daughter of Jape and Mary Boswell.
The one that you just showed me.
The one I just showed you.
Okay.
Which was my great-grandparents. And Clinton and Delia kept Jape and Mary in their home for many years in their old age. And I was about 17 years old when Jape died, but I remember a lot of the old stories about things they did when he was young.
Good things or?
Good things.
Oh, good. I thought maybe they were a little mischievous, maybe.
Yeah, some of them was mischievous, but they was pranks on neighbors and on kids.
Now, there was one of them that lived with you that I remember you saying that she was kind of a little bit on the ornery side. Which one was she? Or am I thinking of someone else, some other story? That she was difficult to live with or something when she got older. I might be thinking about someone else. Okay.
No. This is Sydney and Melvini, which she was a ham. Sydney was a Mears. This is their oldest daughter, Fanny Mears. Then Fanny Pate, she married a Pate. And my Aunt Evelyn, Daddy's sister, gave me this picture, and that's about all I know about it.
All right, now Henry Sidney was his full name, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Henry Sidney Mears.
Right.
Now, on Henry Sidney, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit more because it's interesting that same look. Could you give me a little more light on that, please, sir? There we go. It's interesting that this gentleman, Buddy's daddy, my husband, James Redrick Mears, used to tell about his granddaddy being an Irishman. Now, have you heard any stories about either Scottish or Irish background in the Mears family?
Yeah, I have. That they was English and Irish, but that's about all I've ever heard. That they was Scotch, English, and Irish.
That's kind of what Buddy's daddy said also. He was Scotch, and I remember English and Irish. Fantastic. Well, that's a wonderful picture. And I've got a still picture of that too, so we'll have both of those. Okay, fantastic. Now, we've heard about the gun, and we've got those 3 pictures. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ask, let's see if we can get you to retell the story, because you told it to me on the telephone one day, and I wanted so badly to record it. So there was something about Levin, where he was buried, and his wife, and also about the homestead, and your granddaddy, or great-granddaddy, I guess it was, lived there, all those stories, okay? Tell me those.
Okay. We'll start with Levin. He was a preacher, and I've been told he was a Methodist preacher, and some say he was a hard-shell Baptist preacher. I'm not sure. But he was retired and living in Cypress, Florida. And the church asked him to go to Alabama, which is the town of Troy, and preach it till they could replace a preacher up there. And that is where I was told that he was buried, because he died up in Alabama. Now, my great-granddaddy, Sidney Mears, he fought in the Civil War. And after the Civil War, he moved over to Holmes County and bought a piece of property about 7.5 miles north of Holmes County on Wrights Creek. And that's where he passed away. He was married to Melvina Ham.
Is that just not Hamilton now, but Ham, H-A-M?
H-A-M.
Okay.
She was from Holmes County area. She still has relatives living in this area. And after he passed away, my great-grandmother Melvina moved in with Clinton and Delia, which was my grandfather and granddaddy, and she lived with Clinton and Delia up into the, I believe, 27 or in the 20s. And my daddy did not like his grandmother.
That's the one story I remember you telling.
She would tell on the children and tattle, and he just never did like her. And even after she passed away, he didn't like her any better. And he had to drive her to church once a month on a old doctor's buggy with an old mule. He had to drive her about 8 or 10 miles because they had services preaching once a month at this Red Hill Methodist Church where she went. And if he didn't do just like she thought he should, she'd tell Clinton when he got home, and Daddy would get a whipping. So he just never liked his grandmother.
Now, okay, that's the story I remember you telling. Now tell about the homestead of how your great-granddaddy, I guess it was, he was the youngest. Wasn't he pretty close to the youngest of all those children? Your great-granddaddy and your...
My granddaddy was the youngest of Sidney's children.
Yeah, okay, that's what I remember.
And I think Sidney was about probably close to the last of Clinton's children.
Now that's Henry Sidney Mears, correct? That's the one we just saw the photo a moment ago.
Right.
Got it. Fantastic. Anything else you want to tell? I'd love to hear these stories, and getting them recorded is awesome. I'm so delighted you're willing to do this.
Well, I can tell you more stories about my grandpa Boswell. He would buy cattle and drive them to West Bay and sell them to the Cubans. Him and his brothers would, when they plowed their corn, the last time they plowed it, they used to call it laying it by. And they didn't have to work it anymore till they gathered the corn.
What do you explain that laying it by? Because when we plant, in fact, I just planted corn last week in our big garden, and we always planted it in years past, and then after it got up about 3 inches or so, then we'd put fertilize, and then we'd throw the dirt towards the corn. Now, laying it by, explain that term, please.
They would take a plow when the corn was about 2 or 2.5 foot tall, and they would turn the dirt to the stalks. They had
any fertilizer go on there, any cow manure or anything other than just throwing the dirt to it?
Well, in that day and time, there was very little commercial fertilizer. Only thing they put, they'd put the cow manure from the barn where they milked their cow and had the cows in their garden spaces. Mm-hmm. And that's one reason we got so much of North Florida cleared for cultivation, because they would farm a little piece and then it would quit producing. They would clear another piece, and that was called new ground, and they just kept cleared. And they didn't have commercial fertilizer. They didn't know as much about agriculture as we do now. So, but they called it a shovel, that a mule pulled. It throwed the dirt up to the roots of the corn, and that was called laying it by.
Laying it by.
They would drive these cows down to West Bay, which is down near Panama City, and they would sell them to the Spanish for gold. And Grandpa bought a lot of oxen, and when they built the L&N Railroad across North Florida, from Jacksonville to New Orleans, he got a contract with the railroad, and he had a lot of people working for him, and they cut cross ties, and they haul them to the railroad sites and sell them. And he did pretty good cutting cross ties.
Amazing.
That's all I know about that.
That's great. That is great. Well,
I want to tell you what one of Granny's brothers.
that's your grandmother now you're talking, Granny. Okay.
Yeah. Well, they had an old doctor down there in Bonneville, and he got grandmother's brothers to cut his stove wood for him, because everybody had wood stoves back in those days. And I don't remember which brother it was. He had cut a Jersey wagon load of stove wood to deliver to the doctor. Well, the doctor had a Polly parrot.
Parrot? Is that, you talking about a bird?
Yeah,
A Polly
parrot
parrot.
that
Okay.
could talk real well. And Granny's brother delivered that stove wood. He had to stack it in back of the house. And he pulled in there, and the doctor had a colored maid working for him. And she knew him because he had delivered stove wood there before. But the parrot come walking around the house. He was out loose in the yard. And he looked at my great uncle's horse, and he says, "God damn, what a poor horse." And it made him mad. And he started throwing stove wood at the parrot. And he had stove wood scattered all over that doctor's backyard. When that old lady that was the maid seen what he was doing, she run out there and stopped him, and told him that, he said, "I don't have any bird, any green chicken coming out here and talking about having a poor horse." Well, he went back home and told his brothers and sisters what happened. They laughed at him. They said, "They ain't no green chickens that can talk. You losing your mind." They didn't believe that parrot, nothing about the parrot, but that was a tale that they used to tell.
Now, do you think it was truth, or do you think it was just a good old story that sounded good and made everybody laugh?
It was the truth. It happened.
Oh, it happened, okay.
Because later on in years, when I was young, when all of them would get together, they would tell that on him and laugh. And I enjoyed them getting together and telling things that some of them had done to each other.
That's funny. Well, I'm going to do this same thing hopefully with James and Gladys, because I know two stories myself about James and Edward and their spouses when they were coming up to Falling Waters State Park. The first reunion we ever had there at Falling Waters, when Mary Ellen and Lois Campana and let's see who else was involved. Linda, Marshall, Linda Bryant Marshall, and a whole bunch of them got together, several of those ladies, and they put on that thing, and we drove from Texas, brought our 2 children, and that was the first year that either one of our kids had ever even known there were other Mears in the world besides their grandmother and granddaddy. And they were thrilled when we got down here. In fact, they had such a good time that weekend. Brad was sitting in the back of our van, and he was just a little kid, and he says, "I don't want to go home." He's had so much fun with his cousins. Anyway, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Most